Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I am back again. This is part 2 using the Close to My Heart Daisy Meadows card making workshop. And these next 2 videos are going to be additional ideas of card designs that you can use with everything included in the kit. So this card I'm starting off with is pretty simple. I have trimmed out a panel from the plaid pattern paper. This measures 4 by 5 1/4. I placed that down there on top of my card base. Again, these card bases and envelopes were included in the kit. I have pulled in some of my Peacock ink and trimmed out a label from the white cardstock. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, "Thanks a bunch." I did take a piece of the yellow rip strip that I had left over, placed that across the top of my card base there and trimmed that off. Then I'm going to pop up my label here using some foam dots and press that down right over top of that yellow strip. And that is going to complete card number 1. Sweet and simple, perfect for your stash to have on hand whenever you need a thank you card. For this second card here, I'm using a piece of the pink cardstock, and this was a leftover piece. It ended up measuring roughly 2.5 inches wide, and then I did trim that to the size of my card base, so it is 5.5 inches tall. I've laid that down, and then I wanted to use a card with lots of these wooden hearts. I knew I would have a ton left over, and I just had this idea of placing them all together in this jumble. I thought this would look really cool, and this is one of my favorite cards that I have come up with using all of these goodies. So I'm showing you the process here. Of course, I've got it sped up, and I'm just mixing in the large hearts and the small hearts. I'll move things around, just trying to make all of that fit in a nice, pretty pattern. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and I decided I wanted to add just a little bit more to that to help some of these hearts stand out. So all of the cutout hearts that are just the outlines, I'm going to take those to my Smoothie ink pad, just rub those on top to give them a little bit of color, and then I'll press those down into place. Now, when you're doing this, you do want to be careful because you're going to get that ink all over your fingers if you are placing them down right away. So you may want to put yours down and let them dry in between, but for me, I was just sort of in the process. I didn't mind my fingers getting a little bit messy. There, I am using a napkin or paper towel just to help press those into place to help keep my fingers a little bit safe from that staining. So I wasn't sure here if I wanted a border on my label or not. I did go ahead and stamp one out, and then I decided in the end that with all of those hearts, adding the extra border was just a little too much. So I decided to go with the plain one for my sentiment, just laying that out here. I'm gonna add some foam dots off to the side just to keep that nice and even. Now keep in mind, if you are going to recreate this card, those wooden hearts do make this a little heavy, so you would need some extra postage or maybe just hand deliver this one. Added a little bit of glue there for the portion that's going to be on top of those hearts, and I will go ahead and press my sentiment into place. And that is going to complete card number 2. Card number 3 is going to be a little more detailed. So I have taken some of my gates here and trimmed those out using the white cardstock. And then I am going to, of course, as you can see here, I have cut the archway off the top. I just wanted to create a fence line look. So I think I ended up cutting a total of 4 of these. I went a little overboard. I made this longer than I needed to, but that's okay. The pieces that I trim off, I will go ahead and use on another card later. But I'm just lining this up here to create sort of a fence line look. And I'm going to use my score tape, and I will just press that down and then add each piece individually to create one long fence. And there, as you can see, I'm lining all of this up, and it already looks way too long, but I was in the process and making sure I had everything lined up evenly so that they were overlapping the same way on each side. And once I finished this, I realized, oh, I really did not need that many of these. So once I line that up there, and I've got this panel again trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4, I'm going to line that up, and then I will decide to trim off just those excess pieces there, doing my best to keep that as even as I can. And I can use those other 2 pieces for another card later. I did want to add some flowers, but I have noticed that when trying to stamp those over top of the fence, it does give it sort of a strange look because it's an uneven spot that you're stamping. So I decided I wanted to put in the time and actually fussy cut those out. But I have spared you that on the video. So you'll see that the flowers and the stems and everything are all cut out off to the side there. Here I am stamping out my sentiment, and I decided I wanted to swap to a pink background here. It is the same size, 4 by 5 1/4, and I didn't like the way that first one stamped. So I didn't want to waste the paper because I'm trying to create all of these cards using just what was included in the kit. So I am going to just flip that over, stamp my sentiment again, and then I'm going to add a little extra piece of that pink behind my fence line there, and you'll never know when I place that down that there's more stamping underneath that. So again, I have added some glue. I'm going to press that into place. I did, just as I did in the first video, stamp out those leaves going up the sort of side poles of my fence there, and that was using my Fern ink. The sentiment is stamped using Smoothie ink. I'm just trimming everything down here to make sure it's all nice and even. And then I will grab some glue dots, and I'm going to press all of my leaves and my flowers into place. So I played around with a couple of different flowers, and then I thought it would be a really fun idea to, instead of using flowers, add in some hearts in place of flowers. So here I'm just laying things out, getting an idea of how I want all of that to look. I'm going to add one more stem off to the side there and another yellow flower these little, I think they're dahlia flowers, were really probably my favorite from the kit. I thought those, the little yellow flowers were so pretty. And then I'm going to again take my hearts and I'll add some ink on top of those. Just gonna run one side of those on my Smoothie ink pad to give those a little bit of color. And then I am going to use my scissors to flip those there, trying to keep some of that ink off of my fingers. And I will grab a glue dot with my pokey tool, pick up one of the hearts, and then press those into place using an extra piece of that cardstock. Grab my card base here, just making sure those are down nice and snug. And then I will, because I forgot to add my panel before I added all of the little hearts, I'll add some ATG right on top of the card base and then press my panel on top. Oh, trimming off that little bit of excess. Glad I caught that before I placed that down. And press that into place. And that will complete our third card for today's video. Alright, this fourth card is again going to be pretty simple. I have trimmed out this plaid pattern paper. I think I mentioned in a previous video that this was really my favorite pattern paper from this whole collection. So wanted to try and use this in some different ways. I trimmed that down to 4 by 5 1/4 and then cut off one of the corners there. And once I trimmed that off, I trimmed a little bit more to leave a little white opening there, just to give something a little different visually. Gonna add some ATG, or I'm sorry, some art glitter glue, and press both of those into place on top of my card base. Now I played around with maybe adding a strip of different color in that opening, but eventually I decided I would just leave it as it was. So I'm gonna grab another one of these labels, and this time I am gonna stamp a border, again pulling in that Peacock ink. And I went with the sentiment, thanks a bunch. You can never have too many thank you cards. I will go ahead and use my Peacock ink for that as well. I thought about maybe shadow stamping that, but it was a little bit too light. So I did go with just the straight color right off the ink pad. And I think these two thank you cards would actually work really well. They're a little bit more masculine. I know they do have that stripe of pink in them, but for a kit that has a lot of hearts and flowers in it, I think we got a few masculine cards made out of this as well. And that's going to complete card number 4, as well as the video for today. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I've used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.